Welcome to the Inkspired Heart Show with me, Natalie, where we're healing hearts, mind, body, and soul by exploring the journey of self-discovery, self-worth, self-love, and self-healing through spirituality, poetry, writing, and music, and to help inspire us to find ourselves throughout our journey, empower ourselves with our experiences, and to grow into the highest version of ourselves we were destined to be. From discovering what true love is about for the first time, or knowing that past experiences in love do not define us or the definition of love, but rather that it has incredible moments. It shares the discovery of finding the courage to be who you are in a world so full of stigma on what is perfect, what is acceptable, and what is not, and delves into the reality of knowing ourselves first and foremost before we can give of ourselves to others. It shares insight into knowing it's okay to not change for anyone, while seeing that anything is possible through hope and finding inner peace through wisdom. It depicts the discovery of knowing that there isn't always darkness because there is light inside of us all, and to stand tall no matter what with confidence. It encourages us to push through it all with undeniable strength and to know it can be done with courage. It embodies the power to know it always matters through belief and reminds us that life exists through love and that it is okay to give it all through passion. In going on a self-discovery journey, we begin to uncover the true essence of our soul, unconditional love, and that the light of each of us can bring to this world will transform lives by inspiring and healing one heart at a time. In today's episode, we're going to talk about conditional love and the effect on my inner child. Because when we're born, we come into this world with souls made of purity and hearts that love without conditions, where we see the world innocently through eyes of color and with a deep desire to explore the magic of a world unknown while in our truest, purest form. But it's not a world that stays that way for so many, where the magic in a world seen by innocent souls and passionate, unconditionally loving hearts is often made to dissipate because of the reality of a world that ultimately loves differently. As a little girl, I always felt out of place, where my world didn't make sense to those around me because my world was made of magic and unicorns, Prince Charming, fairy tales, angels, music, the moon, the stars, crystals, tarot cards, and so much more. It was a world where my soul sang a different song to those around me, my heart dancing to a different beat. A world where my eyes saw everything with the colors of the rainbow, and where my heart believed it was the most amazing place I had ever seen. Where I felt in the depth of my soul that I was here to lead my life passionately through love, unconditionally. I was lucky enough to have found music in the pure melody of music early on in my life, something that would keep my world alive, because through the all-consuming rhythm that it brought to my heart and soul, I was able to keep believing that all I ever dreamed about love and life existed for at least a little while, and that no one could take that away from me. It made me feel safe. But it was also a world where my soul still longed more and more for home, even though I had a home and a family of my own. Eventually, guilt started taking over because I felt like I was not being grateful for having a family. But it was only because I was struggling to understand why even with them, I still didn't really feel at home. I still always felt so out of place. And in time, I started finding it harder to live alone in the only world I knew because I felt like I did not belong. I felt like I was never seen. I felt like everything I said was make-believe because of how others looked at me when I spoke about my world. And yet, despite it all, I somehow knew in my heart and soul that my world was real because I could feel it in the deepest part of me, even through the doubt. However, it was not long before it started becoming a very heavy burden to my heart and soul, where those around me kept constantly making me question my world. Because in a world so full of deceit with must be like this lies, I started to find myself lost inside with so many silent cries. I found myself in a place where I was being made to feel like I wasn't good enough, and where going into the crowd had become so scary and so tough. There were so many times that I was made to feel outcast and all alone, and so I knew that I was being forced to choose between being myself or someone else completely unknown. And as much as I wanted to fight against it all, I found it hard to not want to change into what others believed I should be. And eventually, I had started losing sight of my own truth. To be myself, to be true. Where most of the time I was told to be quiet, that I talked too much, that I was too much. So I began quieting myself, keeping my feelings and thoughts to myself. I'd started losing my voice. My biggest gift had officially appeared to have become my biggest weakness to others. So one day, when the load got too heavy to carry, all I could do was close my eyes, take a deep breath, and make one of the hardest decisions of my young life. The choice that it would be safer to let my world as I'd come to know it dissolve and learn to live in the real world as someone else. I was broken, left failing to trust the whispers of my soul, closing off to the inner compass of my heart that should have been my guide through my world. I was no longer relying on my heart, but merely choosing to exist, no longer wanting to be. I'd chosen to live in the real world as someone who would be seen as normal, because while I was anything but normal, I knew that becoming someone else other than who I was, deep down in my soul, was better than the struggle I was facing constantly on my own, and so that I could be loved, accepted. But with this, I realized that it would mean locking away the biggest part of what made me who I was, my heart. It had become clear to me that my heart had become too much for the real world to bear. With so much love in my soul for all things unique, esoteric, mystical, and magical in my world, I began to see that this was not something normal by those around me. That living from my heart was not a safe place anymore. So that was the moment I closed it, put it away for safekeeping as best as I could. That way, I could start to learn to live in the real world with the way love was seen, felt, and expressed. Soon after that, I started to see that the real world started to become a very scary place. The more and more I began closing off my heart, because it meant that everything I'd ever known, dreamed, and believed from and about my world started to feel like maybe I was definitely not normal, and that maybe I'd been wrong all along. At times, as I grew older, my new world also started to feel lonely, no matter who was around. Sometimes I felt like I was floating, and no matter how hard I tried, my feet just couldn't find the ground. There were times it all seemed so busy, with not a single moment to catch my breath, and in those times, I found myself spinning, often never ending, always going round and round like no quiet was ahead. I started to become so afraid because things would get so loud outside and in my head, like a constant white noise or crowds that would stop me so quickly in my stead. I began to see that others saw the world through completely different eyes, where having a different color skin was something that made you less or more worthy of certain things, where people didn't love each other the way I thought they were supposed to, where people chose to hurt each other instead of loving each other, and fighting to keep each other safe instead of simply just being in a safe space. But maybe this is how things were supposed to be, and I really started to question everything I'd ever known from my own world and started to wonder why things were so different, but I didn't really know the answer. Slowly, my eyes started seeing things in grey instead of the beautiful, magical, radiant colors that I had before. This really started to make things in my new world seem so daunting and terrifying to face. But I knew that if I really tried and if I really wanted to be loved, I could eventually start to see things normally and make myself fit in, even though I knew that it would be sometimes hard doing it all alone. I knew that embarking on my new life journey with so much still unknown, even with each day that I might have found challenging, that I would have to find the strength to push through, because I knew that it would be sometimes all I would have. As things began to unfold more and more in my new world, I began to learn the way things were done. Through this, I began to see myself differently and began to not like the person I was before, thinking that I was silly for seeing things differently because I appeared to be the only one in the real world who was seeing things differently. My eyes were being shown all that the real world had known, not because of a choice to not love like me, but because it was all that the people in the world had come to know. It appeared that it was all that their families had known, what society had come to expect because of its history, and everything that was being spoken about, taught, and shared in the real world. And just as I thought it may be, the days were so hard, more often than not, where I had started to find comfort in the dark. Each day, as nighttime fell, I found it easier to breathe a little easier, and began feeling safer when I was alone. The darkness of the night allowed me to bring the little pieces of who I was before out for some air and safely put those pieces away again before I had to step out into the real world again. It was during these times of solace that I began to tell myself that if I found myself in a time of sudden fear, of not knowing what would be ahead, all it would take is a single moment to stop me in my stead, where in that momentary silence with "how do I do this?" rushing through my head, I'd be able to find the will to push through and see that all that would really matter in those moments would be to just do my best instead. I started to realize that being simply human had become a challenge in itself, that this would be the beginning of the lesson of all lessons, to endure and show some stealth. In time, I started to realize that it was okay to not always get it right, and that it was not meant to be easy. And I didn't want to give up the fight. And if at the end of it all, I still felt like I was losing my way, I would just need to take a moment to look deep inside of myself, where I could find my strength, a strength that would always be there to stay. I started to see that even when I felt alone and found myself in moments of not knowing what to do, just looking deep in my heart, I would be able to find the strength that has always been so deep inside of me. Through this, I'd also slowly started learning how to become someone else with just a single breath, and how to go back to who I truly was, even if it was just for a brief time. It made living in the real world a little easier to bear some days, and easy to manage as time went by while I was going through the process of learning to understand how different the world around me loved. I had come from a world of unconditional love and had to learn to live in a world of conditional love. A world where love is defined by what you do, how you do it, what you say, even how you say it, what you do for others, and how others do things for you. I have seen that love can come with a price, and that sometimes that price is big, sometimes that price is small, and sometimes that price is not even enough. My eyes have witnessed love as determined by how someone is feeling, and how sometimes those feelings are placed on someone else instead of being acknowledged as their own. I have experienced love with terms and conditions where expectations become the reason one would either give or receive love from another, where love would be denied or taken away when the expectations are not met, or another would not feel worthy enough or deserving because of their knowing about love. I have seen and experienced that love can be angry, that it can be ugly, that love can mean choosing to stay even when it isn't safe or right because of a belief that there is nothing else that could be done, or where one did not know how to safely get out because it's all they've come to know. I have seen love that is not committed to a single heart, where someone would step out of love to love another while still with someone, where this meant that love was not dedicated, not true, not loyal. I have witnessed the world with eyes where love can be shown as children being hurt by strangers, by those close to them, where children get scared to be themselves or even speak because it means that they too may be made to change into someone else completely just to be safe, just to feel safe, to feel normal. Where stories are told about where love looked like animals being hurt and people standing by laughing, sometimes joining in on the fun. Where love is shown as family hurting each other, turning their backs on each other, abandoning another because they were not good enough or different. Where love is used as an excuse for another to disrespect, mistreat, degrade, shame and hurt another mentally, physically, emotionally, and even verbally. Thinking back on it, while I was adjusting to a new world, it was becoming a world where love had started turning cold because the warmth I'd felt in my world had started to slowly fade, and I wasn't sure if this meant that I too would have to see, feel, and experience love this way. And this started making my heart ache, and I had begun to become more and more uncomfortable in the new world I was choosing to have to like, but I still continued to fight with all my strength to accept that this was simply how the world loves and something I would just have to get used to, experience, live in, and become. In time, I did start learning to see, feel, and experience love in these ways, just like the world around me, and all that I had once known and felt in my soul about what love was in my world started to slowly dissipate and fade away. And this is when I started to finally find my place in a world that had forgotten how to love without conditions. And all that I was before and all that I'd once been had begun to disappear into the twilight. That was the moment that I'd officially abandoned myself. All that I was, all that I wanted to be, all that I thought I could be, and all that I thought about love and life. It had also become the beginning of abandoning myself for others, for love. It had also become the beginning of my fear of abandonment from others too. Until my spiritual awakening, where I had to face this, accepting it as one of the most challenging, painful lessons through my darkness in this life, finding the strength to push through. I knew I had to be strong and find the courage to look at myself and sit through my darkness, to bring myself back to the beautiful light that has always been inside of me. I couldn't hide who I was anymore. And it meant facing parts of myself that I didn't want to, of who I had become, of who I no longer wanted to be, because it was not the real me. Through this, I truly discovered the power of how a truly beautiful single soul coming into my broken world, standing by my side, being my home, my safe place, could change everything and earth-shatteringly break down the reality I'd become illusioned to. A soul who has become the biggest part of my transformational journey, bringing me back to the pure core essence of who I am, who I've always been, helping me to realize that while some may see my heart as my biggest weakness, it is safe for me to choose to no longer be afraid of the way I knew and showed love before it all, and to step into who I have truly always been in the deepest depth of my soul all along, with my heart being my greatest gift I can give this world, and the most empowering purpose that I have to share. Bringing color and life back to the heart of my inner child, to that little girl who could never find her place in this world, showing her that her heart is what has always made her beautiful, unique, different, and worthy of loving and being loved unconditionally. So, if I could leave you with just one word to help you along your own transformational soul journey back to you, it would be courage. Courage to know that it can be done. To be the truest you that you could ever be, because those who truly love you will accept every part of the beautiful soul that you are, deep down inside of you. All of you. The beautiful, magical soul that you've always been, but may too have had to hide from the world. Because living life in the big lane is not an easy one, hiding from judgment with your head against the stigma gun. Living life large may be all you've come to know, where it's easier to hide who you are than let your you truly show. A self you believe is what should be to keep you safe from feeling, and you believe to be all that you know as your only source of healing from the wounds you have, and a way to keep the scars you hide. A real you feel is what you need to keep your you safe inside, where it's not about a choice that you willingly made, but rather a had to be. A place where it makes more sense to be someone else than to set your you free to be who you are and become who you truly should. And to find the courage deep inside and think to yourself, I could. But know that you are safe to live your life in truth, where you shouldn't have to hide, where you don't have to conceal your scars, but rather feel safe wearing them with pride. Know that you do have the courage to find what's really true, to take a look deep inside and see the truly beautiful you. Then, with your pride and courage, you will find a means and way to be the best version of yourself and to push those fears away. You have the will to live your life on the smaller side, because even though you may feel broken, you've got nothing left to hide. Scars, they make you human. They show you that you are not weak, but incredibly brave and strong. So be brave enough to look inside your broken. Don't be afraid to look into the deepest depth of your soul. Discover the magic within you, and be bold enough to show the world your most authentic you, just as I am after awakening to the true depth and beauty of my just authentic you. Through this incredibly beautiful, powerful journey, rediscovering all the magic that has always been inside of me. In the next episode, we're going to look at inner child wounding, fear of abandonment, and how this impacts both our internal and external world. Until then, I'm sending you so much love and light and support on your journey back to your just authentic you.